Patris, Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Intueriva auditari Dei.
Ad Deum glorificat juventutem meam.
Iudica me Deus et discerne cosa meam. De gente non sancta abone iniqua et loso erue me.
Quia tu es Deus fortitudo mea, quare me repulisti, et quare Christis in cedo dum affligit me inimicus.
Imite ducem tua et veritate tua. Ipse me deduxer et ad deduxer in montum sanctum tuum et in tabernacula tua.
Et introibat ad Dei, ad Deum glorificat juventutem meam.
Confitebor tibi incitera, Deus, Deus meus, quare tristis est anima mea, et quare conturbis me.
Spera in Deo quoniam ad tu confitebori, salutare vultus me et Deus meus.
Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto.
Sicut erat in principio nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen.
Introibo auditari Dei.
Ad Deum glorificat juventutem meam.
Adjutorium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Qui feci celum et terram.
Confitete, beati Maria, Sancta Virgine Beati Michaela, beati Ioannis Baptiste, Sanctis Sposo Paulo, omnibus sanctis vobis fratres, quia peccavit in mis conjurationem verbo et opere, et culpa mea maxima culpa. Ideo precor beatum Mariam semper Virginem, beatum Michaela, Archangelum, beatum Ioannis Baptistam, Sanctus Sposo et Pedro Paulo, omnes sanctis vobis fratres, orari pro me, ad Dominum Deum nostrum.
Siat qui omnipotens Deus et qui et dimissus peccatis tuis, educat te optitam aeternam. Confiteor Deum potenti, beati Maria Semper Virgine, beati Michaeli Archangelum, beati Ioannis Baptiste, sanctis apostolis Petro et Paolo, omnibus sanctis et tibi pater, quia peccavit in mis non verbo et opere. Mea culpa mea maxima culpa. Ideo pecor beatam Maria Semper Virgine, beati Michaelem Archangelum, beati Ioannis Baptiste, sanctus apostolos Petro et Paolo, omnes sanctos et te salvationare omne ad Dominum Deum nostrum.
Misereator vestri nubit et ens Deus et demistis peccatis vestris, perducat vos ad vitam aeternam.
Amen.
Indulgentium, solutionem et remissionem peccatorum nostrorum tuibuat nobis omnipotens et misericordias Dominus.
Amen.
Deus tu conversus vivificabis nos,
Et lex tua recabat in
ostende nobis Domine misericordiam tuam,
et salutare tuum memus,
Domine exaudi orationem meam,
et clamor meus a te venga,
Dominus vobiscum.
et cum spiritu tuo.
Oremus. Circumdederunt me gemitus mortis dolores inferini, circumdederunt me, et in turatione me invocavi Dominum et exaudavit divit in templo sancto suo vocem meam. Diligiam te, Domine fortitudo mea, Dominus firmamentum meam, et refugium meam et liberator meus. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Circumdederunt me gemitus mortis dolores, inferini circumdederunt me, et in turatione mea invocavi Dominum et exaudivit de templo sancto suo vocem meam. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Christe eleison. Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison. Dominus vobiscum. Oremus. Preces populi tui quesumus, Domine, clementer exaudi ut, qui juste pro peccatis nostris, affligimor pro tui nominis gloria misericorditer liberemor, per Dominum nostrum Iesum Christum Filium tuum, qui tecum vivit et regnat in unitate Spiritus Sancti Deus, per omnia saecula saeculorum. Amen. Lectio Epistolae Beati Pauli Apostoli ad Corinthios. Fratres, nescitis quod il qui in stadio curant omnes quidem current, sed unus excepit bravium, sic coriet ut comprehendatis, omnis autem qui in agone contendit ab omnibus se abstinet, et illi quidem ut corruptibilem coronam accepiant, nos autem incorruptam, ego igitor sic curo, non quasi incertum, sic pugno, non quasi eram verbans, sed castigo corpus meum, et in servitudem redigo, ne forte cum alis predicivarium ipsi repobus efficador. Nolo enum vos ignorare, fratres, quoniam patris nostri omnes sub nube fuerunt, et omnes mare transierunt, et omnes in Moise baptisati sunt in nube, et in mari, et omnes iamdem iscam spiritualem manducaverunt, ut omnes iundem potum spiritualem biberunt, bibebant autem de spiritali consequente eos, Petra autem erat Christus, sed non in pluribus eorum beneplacitum est Deo. Deo gratias. Adiutor in opportunitalibus in tribulationis sperent in te, qui noverunt te quoniam non delinquis, querentes te, Domine, quoniam non infinam oblivio et pauperis, patientia pauperem non peribit in aeternum exurge, Domine, non pleveleat homo. De profundis clamavi ad te, Domine, Domine exaudi vocem meam, fiant auras tua intendentes in orationem servitui, si iniquitates observaveris, Domine, Domine quis sustenebit, quia apud te propitiatio est, et propter legem tuam sustinui te, Domine. Dominus vobiscum. Sequentia Sancti Evangelii secundum Matteo. In illo tempore dixit Iesus discipulos suis parabolam hoc. Simile est regnum caelorum homini pater familiaris qui exit primo mane conducere operarios in vinem suum. Conventione autem facta cum operaris ex denario diurno visit eus in vinam suum, et egressus cerca orarum tertiam, videt alios stantis in foro otiosus, et dixit illis, idet et vos in vinam meum, et quod justum fuerit, dabo vobis. Illi autem abierunt iteram autem, exit cerca sextam et nonam hora, et fecit similiter, cerca undecimam vero invenit alios stantes, et dicit illis, quid hic statis tota de otiosi? Diciunt ei, quia nemo nos conduxit, dicit illis ite et vos in vinem meum, cum sero autum factum esset. Dicit Dominus vinei procuratori suo, voca operarios et rede illis, mercedem incipiens ad novissimis, usque ad primus, cum venessit ergo, qui cerca undecimam horam venerant et ceperunt, singulos denarios, venentes autum et primi, arbitrati sunt quod plus esset accepturi, et pecerunt autem et ipsi singulos denarios, et accepiens murmurabit adversus paterfamilialis, dicentes, hic novissimi una hora fecerunt, et pares illos nobis fecisti, qui portavimus pontus die et istus, et ille respondens uni eorum dixit, Amice, non facio tibi inurorem, nonne externario convenisti mecum, tolle quod tum est, et vadi volo autem, et huic novissimo dare sicut et tibi, aut non licit mihi, quod volo facere, ad oculus tuos nequam est, quia ego bonus sum, sic erant novissimi primi, et primi novissimi, multi enum sunt vocati, pauci vero electi. A continuation of the Holy, please stand. A continuation of the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus spoke to his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven is likened to a householder who went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. And having agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing in the marketplace idle. And he said to them, Go you also into my vineyard, and I will give you what shall be just. And they went their way. And again, he went out about the 6th and the 9th hour, and did in the like manner. But about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing, and he saith to them, Why stand you here all the day idle? They say to him, Because no man hath hired us. He saith to them, Go you also into my vineyard. And when evening was come, the Lord of the vineyard saith to his steward, Call the laborers and pay them their hire, beginning from the last, even to the first. When therefore they came about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. But when the first also came, they thought that they should receive more. And they also received every man a penny. And receiving it, they murmured against the master of the house, saying, These last have worked but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal to us, that have borne the burden of the day and the heats. But he answering said to them, Friend, I do thee no wrong. Didst thou not agree with me for a penny? Take what is thine and go thy way. I will also give to this last, even as to thee. Or is it not lawful for me to do what I will? Is thy evil because I am good? So shall the last be first, and the first be last. For many are called, but few are chosen. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you. The words of the gospel wipe away our sins. First time I've been here in this, so it's a wonderful opportunity. I'm Father Tom, and I was just celebrating the cantata mass with the Carmelites this morning, so it was a nice experience to be there with them. And I have, in my own parish of Divine Mercy, St. Cecilia's, I have the Mass, the extraordinary form. There's a Latin Mass tonight at 7 as well, so it's good to be here with you all today. We offer this Mass for Danuta and Jerzy Maldalinski, and we begin today the time between Epiphany and Lent, and the start Ash Wednesday. There are 3 Sundays known as Septuagesima, Sexagesima, and Quinquagesima, 70, 60, and 50, approximately, days before Easter. So it's the intention of these 3 weeks to prepare us for Lent, such that we share Israel's sojourn in the desert, and we get ready. So now's the time to start thinking about what needs to happen during Lent for each and every one of us. It's like preseason football or whatever, spring training, right? It's kind of has that beautiful, like, gentle transition. You notice I didn't say the Gloria, which is licit. So the Gloria is omitted during this time. It's sort of pre-Lenten, and obviously I'm wearing the color purple. The city of Rome, since the time of Pope Sixtus II, had a great veneration for St. Lawrence and the great patrons of the city of Rome. Those three patrons are St. Lawrence, St. Paul, and St. Peter. They all were martyred in Rome, and their names appear in the Roman canon, which I will recite when I consecrate the body and blood of Christ at this Mass. And so leading up in these 6 weeks, Pope later than Sixtus, Pope Gregory the Great, instituted processions, this lead up into the season of Lent, that would mark each one of those three patrons as we make these 3 Sundays, Septuagesima, 60, 70, 60, and 50 days before Easter. So we celebrate St. Lawrence today. We remember him in a special way. And in Rome, right now, there are special at St. Lawrence outside the walls. They are celebrating right now, or earlier today. And so we lead up to Lent by making this procession. And you might have heard the station churches, if you're familiar with that, station churches. So what it is in Rome, they have every day during Lent and leading up to Lent, they have special churches designated as in St. Lawrence today. And so a very well-known author, you may know, George Weigel, wrote a very famous biography of John Paul II. He made a Lenten journey, and he documented it in a book where he basically every day he went to every single station church the 40 days of Lent and the days leading up to it as well, some of them, as I understand it. And he wrote a book about it. So anyway, if you hear that word for your further Catholic understanding, like a station church, is a place where you're supposed to stop. You're making a journey. Lent is a journey. The Christian life is a journey, right? It's something that we just begin and then we're certified and we're good to go. But we have to constantly re-examine ourselves, re-enter into kind of becoming a beginner again, learning anew. So a little bit about that. And of course, remember the 3 marks of Lent, which will be the gospel on Ash Wednesday, right? The gospel of Matthew, right? So that's prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. So we remember that and reflect upon this pre-season of Lent. One of the things that's interesting about St. Lawrence, just as his day is a special, we remember him in a special way today, is that he was like St. Ambrose. He was one of the great saints. He was very well regarded in secular life. He was very gifted, had a lot of abilities. And so Pope Sixtus in the year 250 or so asked him to be not only a deacon, but an archdeacon, like a deacon over the other deacons. And the archdeacon held the purse. He was responsible for money, safeguarding, and so forth, for the distribution at the behest of the Pope. And so when the Pope was arrested and martyred, the officials came looking for the Archdeacon Lawrence. Where's the money? We don't want you. We have a lot, you're educated. You know our Roman ways, the well-formed in their culture. We'll leave you alone. Just give us the money. We'll leave you alone. Okay, so that was St. Lawrence's choice. Okay, and so what does St. Lawrence do, right? He distributes it to the poor, and then in a gesture famous in the city of Rome, you've probably heard this story, he gathers all the people that he gave the money to, and when he has to give an account to the procurator of the city of Rome about the money and pony up what he had to have in his stewardship, he said, here's the wealth, our poor. Well, so we're going to think of a very special way to send you off to your eternal reward. So he was burned alive. So it was a particularly brutal death. Usually they would behead you, okay? That was the respect that they would show, like St. Paul was beheaded, right? Because he was a Roman citizen. Someone like Lawrence could have but they didn't do that to him. And if you see Michelangelo's The Final Judgment, St. Lawrence is figured prominent there with his grill, because he was so well known in Rome. And so Lawrence is another interesting little sidelight. He's a patron saint of cooks, okay, the method of his death, but also, get this, comedians. Because apparently the story is that as he was dying, he said, yeah, I'm done on one side. You turn me over, I'll be done on the other as well. So anyway, if that's true or not, I don't know. But that's a little about St. Lawrence and his martyrdom. But the treasury, what he handed over, is most definitely true, and was the cause of his martyrdom. So We continue by reflecting upon our readings. In the first reading, St. Paul compares the Christian life to athletic contests, familiar in the Greco-Roman world. Our own Olympics, which are underway right now, the Winter Olympics, is a consequence of that, outgrowth, or recalls the Olympics that were held in ancient Greece. And it comes from that tradition to compete well, to be a virtuous person, to compete well, to prepare well, to deny yourself all sorts of things, to run the good race, as St. Paul says. And so it's a good point for us to recall during Lent. But they contend for a corruptible crown, says Paul in that first reading. But we for an incorruptible one, a prize that does not fade or go away or turn yellow like our palm leaves or branches on Palm Sunday, that is eternal. And so from the earliest times, as the martyrs were known as athletae, athlete, right? Champions. That's what the martyrs were. They were strong in perseverance to the end and the test of the Christian life, that they endured and were found worthy of him. And so, in a sense, they're champions, combatants for Christ. And so the symbol of victory, symbol of victory in the Roman world were palm leaves or laurel leaves. And so this palm branch is still used, and even today they're laying it on the tomb of St. Lawrence. And so we recall, we as Catholics also are beneficiaries, as St. Paul speaks about in that reading, that the Israelites ate the same spiritual food and drink, spiritual food that sustained them, that helped them. Yet, with most of them, God was not pleased. Something to consider. We who have the spiritual food, the privilege of the body and blood of Christ, to think about that. After all, we know that in the Olympics and other professional sports, people get tested all the time for false things that they put in their bodies, steroids and other things, right? So maybe by way of analogy, we might think about what are the false things that we're putting in, ingesting. What are we taking in? What are we watching, allowing our kids to see on TV, reading, things that occupy our time, distract us from the deeper things, the major obligations of life, and what we owe to our God: worship, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, and so forth. Or perhaps the performance-enhancing drugs that are unacceptable to God. Other things, these are attitudes. We look at ourselves and say, well, I'm working so hard. It's a good outlet for me. How many times do I think that? Let me just look at the most interesting thing on YouTube on my desk, huh? Temptation, right? That I'll take a little outlet, right? Nothing bad. There's nothing wrong with it, but well, I don't know. Pulling me away from my obligation, the intensity of working, studying, working, managing my parish. Something to reflect about. It helps me to get along. The distractions, whatever it is. I'm only hurting myself. But you're hurting God. You're hurting you who are made in the image and likeness of God. So things to think about. And so we have to reflect upon that. And of course, the spiritual food that St. Paul mentions in his reading is the sacrament. So what is a sacrament? A sacrament is a ritual instituted, or an outward sign instituted by Christ to confer grace, or to give grace. So grace provides us with sustenance, right, for the journey, as the Israelites were provided miraculously bread, manna, water from the rock that Moses struck. So for us also, that spiritual food, that grace, and it's important that we receive it well. So obviously, going to confession in a regular manner, it also goes hand in hand with receiving the grace of the body and blood of Christ. So leaving the athletic analogy, our gospel likens us, all of us, to workers in a vineyard. Workers in a vineyard. And regardless of whether we start at the earliest hour or at the 11th hour, our God clearly, what does he detest? He detests idleness. Idleness, or sitting around, right? Being active, being involved in some way. It's how
the ordinary way that most of us grow in life. I could have a lot of ideas and theories about what's necessary, what needs to have happen. But when I counter others, when I put myself in a position to, offer myself in some manner to the church and in the life of the church, it's important. It's important. I learned how I grow in some way. And so it's important for us to participate in the life of the parish as God calls us and as what is appropriate for our station in life. But also interesting, the scandal of people are scandalized by the owner. And that's an interesting aspect of this gospel too. That's the scandal. It's not a scandal over his harshness, which is what oftentimes we think of when we think of people struggling with faith and judgment or the great mysteries of life. But what is the real scandal in this parable is not about the what we would say would be the hard things, the deal breakers for most people. But what is the scandal? It's God's generous. It's unfair. That's the problem. He's not like me. He doesn't have the standards like I have. It's wrong. It's unfair. That's the struggle, right? That's and so many parables we'll be hearing, especially in the coming year, that challenge us precisely in that way. It's not the judgments that scandalizes. It's the generosity of God. It's his superabundant generosity that shames us because we're not like that. We're totally not like that. And that disturbs us, makes us feel uncomfortable. This is the standard, what Christ is calling us to do, to become godlike in some way, in that compassion, that generosity, as best we can, that mercy. So, something to reflect upon. And so, my friends, whether the hour be late or early matters not. Whether the hour be early or late, it matters not. But what matters is now. What happens now? My response, your response now, to participate, to change, to grow in the vineyard of the Lord and serve.
Credo in un Deum Patrem omnipotentem factorem caeli et terrae, visibilium omnium et invisibilium, et in unum Dominum Iesum Christum Filium Dei unigenitum, et ex Patre natum ante omnia saecula, Deum de Deo, lumen de lumine, Deum verum de Deo vero, genitum non factum consubstantialem Patri, per quem omnia facta sunt, qui propter nos homines et propter nostrum salutum descendit de celis, et incarnatus est de Spiritus Sancto ex Maria Virgine et homo factus est. Crucifixus etiam pro nobis sub Pontio Pilato, passus et sepultus est, et resurrexit tertia dia secundum Scripturas, et ascendit in caelum, sedet ad dextram Patris, et iterum venturas est cum gloria judicari vivos et mortuos, cuius regni non erat finis, et in Spiritum Sanctum Dominum et vivificantem, qui ex Patri Filioque procedit, qui cum Patri et Filius simul adorator et conglorificator, qui locutus est per prophetas, et unum sanctum, catholicum et apostolicam ecclesiam, confitio unum baptisma in remissionem peccatorum, et expecto resurrectionem mortuorum, et vitam venturi saeculi. Amen. saecula saeculorum. Offerimus tu videm calicem salutatus tuum ventis comiti, expectu divini maestatis suavitate ascenda. Spiritu humilitatis et animo concede suscipa amore te et omnes sex sacrificium nostrum. Vieni sanctifici omnipotens aeterni Deus et benedic hoc sacrificium tuo sanctum nomine Patri. Et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. Et orate, fratres, ut prima Christus sanctificatum citabili fiat apud Deum Patrem omnipotentem. Suscipia Dominus sacrificium.
De mare suis, applaudum notorium nomis tui, ad in coque nostram capisque, et legis tui sancti.
Bones confiete Domini per sale Domini tui altissime. Domini nostrum. Per omnia saecula saeculorum.
Amen.
Dominus vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu
Sur
suo.
sum corda.
Habemus ad Dominus.
Gratias agamus Domino Deo nostro.
Dignum ad justum est.
Vere dignum et justum est, ecum et salutari nos tibi semper et ubique gratias agere. Domine sancte Pater omnipotens aeterni Deus, qui cum unigenito Filio tuo et Spiritus Sanctus unus est Deus, unus est Dominus, non in unius singularitate personae, sed in unius Trinitate substantiae, cor enim de tua gloria, leverante te credimus, hoc de Filio tuo, hoc de Spiritus Sancto, sine divinentia discretionis sentimus, ut in confessione vere sempiternique, deitatis et in personis propietas, et in essentia unitas, et in maestate adorator et qualitas, quam allaudant angeli atque arcangeli, cherubim quoque ac seraphim, qui non cessant clamare coditie una voce dicentes: Sanctus, 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 Dominus Deus Sabaoth, plenis sunt caeli et terra gloria tua, Hosanna in excelsis. Benedictus qui venit in nomine Domini, Hosanna in excelsis. Ut accepte habeas et benedicas, hic dona, hic munera, hic sancta sacrifici et limate. In primis quae tibi offerimus pro ecclesia tua sancta catholica, quam petivi cari custodia et adunare regi numeris totum veterarum, una conformum tuo Papa nostro Francisco Adventisti nostro Roberto, et omnibus orthodox atque catholicae et apostolicae fidi cultoribus. Momento Domini famorum framunque tuorum. Et omnium circumstantium quorum tibi fides cognita est et nota devotio pro quibus tibi offerimus, vel qui tibi offerimus et in vota sua, tibi gerum vota sua, eterno Deo, vivo et vero. Communicantes in memoria venerantes sanctissimus glorias et semper Virginis Mariae Genesis, in novum nostrum Iesu Christi, sed et
beati Iosephius dem Virgin Sponsi et Beatorum Astronomum Torum Petri Pam Ade Jacobi Johannes Tame Jacobi Philippi Bartolome Matthias Simus Tare Eleni Clevi Comunity Sixty Palini Cipriani Lord Johannes et Omnis Sanctorum Horum Meritis Pecibus cum Procesus Magnus Protexius per iendum Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Hoc igito oblationum servitudes nostre sede quinque familiae tuae quesumus Domine ut placatus accipias diesque nostros et tue pace dispas arpe ab aeternum magnum in lectore tuae nobis Virginum per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Quam oblationum tuos nominus quesumus benedictum ad scriptum ratum rationaminam acceparum leque facii venerus ut nobis corpus et sanguis fiat dilectissimi Filii Tui Domini nostrum Iesu Christi qui prediquam protoretor recepit panem in sanctis ac venerabilis manus suus et eminus succinubat te Deum Patrum suum omnipotentem tibi gratias agens benedictis Regis dedicati suus dicens recipite et manducate ex hoc omnis hoc est inum corpus meum. Simul modo postquam cenatum est. Cipiens et ubracarum calcium ex sanctas ac venerabilis manus suus. Tibi gratias agens. Benedixit dedique discipulis suis dicens, et cipite et bibite ex eo omnis. Hic est inum calix sanguinis mei, novi et aeterni testamenti mysterium fidei, qui pro vobis et pro multis fundetur in remissione peccatorum. Hec quoties quod feceretis in mei memoriam facilis. Und et memoris Domini nostri tui sed plebs tua sancta, wisdom Christi Filii Tui Domini nostri cambiate passiones nectar nectar. Sed et celus comunis ascensiones afferimus pacare majestati Tui et Tuis donis actatus. Hostiam purum, hostiam sanctum, hostiam immaculatum, panum sanctum vitae eternae, et calicem salute perpetuae. Supra quae propitiae actionem vultu et dispicere dinieres habere, secute acerte habere dinatus est unum glorii Tui, justi habere et sacrificium patriarchem nostri habere, per quod tibi ut sumus sacerdotis Tuus, Melchizedec sanctum sacrificium immaculatum nostrum. Supplices te rogamus omnipotens Deus, iube hec prefere per manus sancti ingenii Tui in sublime altare Tui, in conspecto divinae majestatis Tui, ut quod et hec altares participationis sacrosanctum Filii Tui, corpus, et sanguinum subserius, omni benedictione celesti in gratia et plena per iundum Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Movite Domini favorabile tuorum, qui nos petitionem consigno fidei in Domine in sommo pacis. Ipsis Domini Dominus in Christo qui scentibus locum refrigeri lucis et pacis ut indulges de peccamur per Christum iundum Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Nobis quoque peccatoribus. Dominus Tuis dignity Junia miserationem tuarum sperantibus patem elenquam et sociatum donari dinieris cum Tuis sanctis apostolus martyribus cum Ioannis Stephanum Mattia Bernarda Marcellino Petro felicitate perpetua agerum Lucia intra quorum nos consortium non estemo meritis sed veni quesumus logitur et vitae per Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen. Per quem hec Domine somnia bona creas sanctificas vivificas et cum ipsum, et in ipsum, est tibi Deo Patri Omnipotente, in unitate Spiritus Sancti, omnis honor et gloria. Per omnia saecula saeculorum.
Amen.
Oremus. Precepitis salutaribus muniti, et divina institutione formate, audemus dicere, Pater noster, qui es in celis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra. Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, et dimiti nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimitimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem,
Sed libera nos a male.
libera nos quesumus ab omnibus flagellantis. Da propitis pacem Diebus nostris. Per Christum Domini nostrum, Iesu Christi, in tecum vivit et regnat in unitate Spiritus Sancti Deus. Per omnia saecula saeculorum.
Amen.
Pax Domini, sit semper vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Cum sit consecratio corpus et sanguis Domini nostri Iesu Christi fiat et sepultus nobis in vitam aeternam. Amen. Agnus Dei qui tollis peccatum mundi, miserere nobis. Agnus Dei qui tollis peccatum mundi, miserere nobis. Agnus Dei qui tollis peccatum mundi, dona nobis pacem. Domine non subdignus, et et tecum meum seducti verbus senabitur anima mea. Domine non subdignus, et et tecum meum seducti anima mea. Domine non subdignus, et et tecum meum seducti corpus Domini. Vitam aeternam.
Fido omnipotenti, beatum edictum per virtum, beatum eteriam angelo, beato Ioannem Baptiste, sanctis apostolis Petri et Pauli, omnibus sanctis, et tibi Patri, quia peccabilis convitatione perdo et opere, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, Fido precordatam Mariam semper virginem, beatum ecore marcantum, beatum Ioannem Baptistum, sanctos apostolus Petrum et Pauli, omnes sanctos et te Pater, orare pro me ad Dominum Deum nostrum.
Desideretur vestum temptatit mis partis vestit. Perducat vos ad vitam aeternam.
Amen.
Indulgentium, absolutionem, dimensione peccatorum nostrorum, tribuat nobis omnipotens et misericors Dominus.
Amen.
Ecce annus Dei, ecce qui tollit peccatum mundi. Domine nostrum Deus et in pectum et tantum in vera sanabitur anima. Domine nostrum Deus et tantum in vera et sanabitur anima. Domine nostrum Deus et tantum in vera sanabitur anima. Corpus Domini.
Illumina faciem tuam super servum tuum, et salva me fac in tua misericordia, Domine non confundar quoniam invocavi te. Dominus vobiscum.
Et spiritus.
Oremus. Fidelis sui Deus per tua dona fermentor ut eadam et percipiendo requeriant et querendo sine fine percipiant per Dominum nostrum Iesum filium quistum tuum qui tecum vivit et regnat in unitate Spiritus Sancti Deus per omnia saecula saeculorum.
Amen.
Dominus vobiscum. Ite missa est.
Placet mi Sancte Spiritus.
Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus,
Pater, Filius et Spiritus Sanctus.
Dominus vobiscum. Initium Sancti Evangelii secundum Ioannem. Gloria a te. In principio erat verbum, et verbum erat apud Deum, et Deus erat verbum. Hoc erat